Creating a unique name and image for a product in the consumer's mind through advertising campaigns with the aim to establishing a significant presence in the market that attracts and retains loyal customers is branding. Hello and welcome. I am Oru Akporono, and this is Business Matters. Branding has a major role to play in increasing the competitive edge of SMEs for the long-run profitable survival in business environments. Let's take our business updates.
On our business update this week, Strategic Leadership Practice Today, SME Brands Conference and Expo. Leadership, an ability to control, guide, persuade and influence the decision of others to achieve organizational goals and objectives. It is against this background that an induction workshop with the theme Strategic Leadership Practice Today was recently organized in Lagos. According to the organizers of the event, strategic leadership styles and good management practices will reduce unemployment rate, corruption, terrorism and kidnapping in our country.
We want to have a situation where we are forward thinking. We look at things the way they should be in future and see how to go about it in our country. And we cannot also run the country in isolation, because you could see what is happening all over the world with the current wind of globalization, digitalization and all of those. Those are all signs of strategy. They are all strategic moves and trends. And for this country to effectively implement change, bring up leaders, bring people who will run things the way we want, I think it's important that they take things the way we have brought them from this organization.
Keynote speakers at the workshop spoke on the critical components of strategic leadership and strategic techniques in achieving leadership excellence.
You need the knowledge of strategy to understand how the terrain is, to understand what globalization and what globalization is providing, to understand other people's innovation, to understand how the complex world will affect management. You need strategy to understand how uncertainty can be managed. You need strategy to define direction. A nation without a direction is in a mess. Agenda is not direction.
Unless we list whatever competencies we have, whatever educational capabilities we think we have, unless they are laced with capable, good, and enduring character, we cannot achieve excellence.
High point of the workshop was the induction of new strategists into the institute. Participants at the workshop bared their minds.
It's going to really help my job in the sense that it's no longer enough to be a manager, but in being a manager, you have to be strategic. In leading people, you have to lead them strategically. Even your decisions are not just going to be sufficient if they are not strategically planned. So that is why I think this is very beneficial to me and to my organization.
Today I've learned that it's not just being a manager, but you have to be a manager with a strategy. You have to know how to actually use the best resources you have and be able to connect the different areas of management together in producing not just effectiveness and efficiency, but also speed and accuracy as you work.
Strategic leadership practice will enhance economic growth and development. Small and medium enterprises play a major role in most economy, particularly in developing countries of the world. It is against this background that SME Brands Conference and Expo 2017 with the theme Unlocking Business Growth Through Branding took place in Lagos. According to the organizer of the event, brand building is important to the long-term viability and sustainability of the SMEs as they share their essence of the conference.
It's really about going through that process of laying a good foundation for their businesses, knowing how they're going to differentiate themselves in the marketplace, how they're going to be distinct, because the competition is there. So if you're like every other person, you don't stand out. If your product is what every other person offers, then there's no really, they won't see any value in going after you where there are other competitors that offer the same thing.
You have to understand where your brand is right now in the minds of the people. If it's nowhere, then you have to create visibility for it. So this is the first in the series of several conferences that will come along the same line, and we're going to be doing quite a lot of justice to this particular subject, covering it from different perspectives, from different angles. The idea is to be able to help and lift up our small enterprises to a point that their brand will become of relevance in the market, and to a point that will be able to create visibility and awareness for their businesses as well.
Speakers at the conference panel discussion says brand building goes beyond a logo and emphasized effective strategies in building brands for the SMEs.
We know what the challenge is in terms of funding as well as resources required to grow their businesses. So social media is a very powerful tool that can be leveraged for brand building, and therefore you spend limited resources but you're able to reach out to a large number of people. So that is a very powerful tool that most small and medium businesses can use.
There were contributions from the participants during the panel discussions as they bared their minds on the event.
It's been a very, very interesting and educative session. One thing about life is that you must always keep learning, and each time you listen, there's always be a takeaway. I believe that I've learned a lot in the few hours that I've spent here.
Most importantly, building a business brand that is acceptable, like something that is the demand of the mass in the country. You know, it's one of the key things that has been mentioned today. So, you know, I'm going on with the idea of creating something that can fix into people's problem, that can be acceptable to the, you know, nation generally.
The growth and sustainability of Nigeria's economy is dependent on the growth of SMEs, which contribute about 70% of total employment and 40% of national income of the economy. Up next, closing figures from the floor of the Nigerian Stock Exchange.
Irrespective of the growing importance of SMEs in global economy, a major portion of the industry is still performing as a commodity. Experts have attributed this to loss of identity in the midst of clutter of brands in the marketplace. Welcome to our professional segment. If you're just joining us, welcome to the professional segment. We have with us in the studio Bola Joko Ajayi, and we'll be discussing branding, the key to SMEs growth and development. Bola Joko Ajayi has been working for multinational brands, and today she wants to give us insights on what branding really is. Welcome, Ma.
Thank you very much.
Ma, I'll be right to say that you're a business marketing consultant.
Yes, so to say.
Okay. Tell us a bit about branding.
Okay, so when you talk about branding, branding is a process by which you create a distinct identity for a product in the minds of consumers. And at the end of the day, the end result you want to gain is to have that brand gain differentiation and distinctiveness in the marketplace.
Okay.
So when you talk about branding, a lot of people misinterpret that to mean just putting colors out there or just advertising, but that's just a segment, a subset of what branding is. Okay. But the entire branding is a process by which you create a distinct identity for a product, and it has to be done consistently over some time.
Okay, we know you have a flair for small and medium scale enterprises. So how can branding be relevant to them?
Okay, so A lot of times when you talk about branding to SMEs, the first thing you hear them say is, I don't have money, or it's expensive. But in the real sense of it, when you look at the fundamentals of branding, you don't really have to start with spending money. And so a lot of SMEs develop their products, they go into the market, they're in the marketplace without thinking about branding. But ideally, that is the starting point for any SME business. So what do I mean? When you talk about branding to an SME, to start with, such a product needs to understand, what is my product all about? That's part of branding. Who are my target audience? Am I going to target this product to women? Is it to men? Is it to men and women? Is it to children? You need to know your target audience. At the same time, you need to know the personality and the characteristics of your target audience, because that's what will help you in determining how you can speak to them in a language that they understand. Once you have those basic fundamentals ironed out, where will this product be sold? Who is going to be sold to? Through what channels? You then begin to talk about even having your logo. So a lot of time people start from the end, but branding should actually kickstart any SME venture. And a lot of time people also think it's about having a logo. So I have a logo and I splash my logo everywhere. That means I'm doing branding, but that's not correct.
Okay, but you've said a lot of things. So, but I feel like SMEs now, the problem should be their finances. So what opportunities are there for small businesses to brand their businesses? Because nobody wants to be thinking about a logo when, you know, they have maybe 20,000 naira to start a pure water business. So how do you sell them?
For an SME business, like I said earlier, it doesn't start with money. Even for a pure water business, you're going to look at, yes, pure water is quite generic in the sense that everybody drinks it, so it's quite functional. But anybody that wants to have a sustainable business over time, a business that would outlive you, it is very important that you start thinking about branding even from the word go. Who are the people? So it may be a pure water business today. In another few years, it could turn into a bottled water business, and it could become a big brand. So I think fundamentally is for SMEs not to belittle their ventures, not to see it as something that is just small and insignificant. You can start branding from knowing who your target audience is. Where am I going to sell? Who are the people that will distribute this product for me? How much am I going to sell this product? Those are elements of branding. And then logo is just a necessity along the path of an SME. So yes, a lot of SMEs have issues, you know, funding, like you said, infrastructural issues, capacity, capability. And if you look at those challenges, they can weigh on them down, but it's not to allow those challenges to kind of prevent them from exerting, not to be a limitation to how far they can go.
Okay, but do you have opportunities? Are there maybe people that just help these small businesses with business branding, give them opportunities to brand their businesses?
Okay, so now if I mention that, you know, they talk to consultants, it sounds quite big, as they know where the money is going to come from and everything. But I think even on their own, there are a lot of do-it-yourself that they can do. And that starts from those elements I had initially indicated. For a pure water business, it's quite generic. You're just going to be limited to maybe your region, your location, and the environs around you. So you want to also give a good account of yourself. Remember that branding, how you can have a brand is the perception that consumers or customers have of you. So if they perceive you to be of good quality, so for a pure water example that you gave, one important element of that is quality. People are quite weary. Is it going to be safe for me to drink? So in that case, you're going to focus on quality. You're going to focus on little things around that. Accessibility. So there's no one size fits all for all SMEs. The situations differ, the peculiarities, the offerings are different. So it's just to ensure that whatever offering that you have out there is customized to the personality of your target.
Is there a particular step? Are there steps? Either the just, you know, some steps that fits everybody?
Okay, yes.
For branding,
definitely.
So can you give us some of them?
So, like I said, a lot of people think of branding at the end. So whether you think of it at the end or you think of it right from the beginning, the first thing is for you to take an inventory stock, take stock. Where am I with my products? What is this product going to be like? Who is it going to be targeted at? Remember, there are a lot of people out there, so you're not just one single player in the marketplace.
Okay.
The marketplace is congested. Competition is very intense. So then the question is, how do you make yourself differentiated? How do you stand out even in the midst of this clutter? That's a significant element that an SME must be able to, that question must be able to answer. What will make me different? What solution am I bringing to people? If your product is not answering a need, then it's going to be a bit difficult to be able to create that point of differentiation. Okay. So you must be able to answer a need in the life of the people that will use your product, and then you have a distinct differentiation. And then you move on to your proposition. So competition, knowing your marketplace is also very important. Who are the other players that have come before you? What is the likelihood that other players might come even after you have come into the market? Once you have all that, then you can begin to have a proposition. This is what I'm going to be like. This is where I'm going to stand. Then your proposition then becomes a selling point, your unique selling point.
Okay.
Because at the end of the day, every brand must have a unique selling point. That's what you're going to tell the other person, I'm better than you. And once you have that, you can then begin to look at different touch points that you can use to advertise. Sometimes people think that advertisement is the starting point. Okay. But if you don't clearly articulate the earlier steps that I said, and you just go into advertisement, you might just find out that the money you're spent has gone to waste because you're not sure who you're targeting that advertisement to, sure, and whether those people even watch those channels. So if you say as an SME you're going on TV, and it's possible that your target audience are not on TV, there might just be a one-on-one contact that you need. And that's an advantage for SMEs because they're not talking mass market. So at the end of the day, they don't also need to spend money on mass media. Sure. So they can spend their money with the face-to-face contact. It's limited, the scope is limited, and so sometimes it's more manageable for an SME to do those kind of things. It can be word of mouth.
Okay, so we have to attain the unique selling point first before we now go on to advertising.
Yes.
Right. What are the benefits of branding for small and medium-scale businesses?
Okay. As you know, the market competitive industry is quite intense in Nigeria and any other place. When it comes to SMEs, there are millions of SMEs around. So benefits, one benefit would be ease of identification. Okay. There are 20 brands almost doing this, offering the same value. What will make yours different? If you're into branding, you've clearly articulated all your steps, and you're using the right channel to showcase your brand, it's easy to identify you as a product. That's one, so ease of identification. It also confers on the brand some perception in the minds of consumers. So when a brand that is clearly branded, consumers will see that brand as having quality, so it confers an image of quality. It also confers an image of size. So no matter how small you are, you're thinking big. And when you're thinking big, people will also begin to see you in that position of being big. What branding also does is it creates distinctiveness and differentiation. Okay. So you can imagine you have, so the common example I can give to make that come to life is you have 5 pieces of apple on the table. So you know we have green apple and red apple. And there are 4 green apples and 1 red apple. Okay. It's very obvious that the red apple is different. Sure. For whatever reason. So people might want to say, oh, that's different. What makes this one different? So that's what branding does for you. It stands you out and it makes you distinct and differentiated. What else branding also does is that it also helps build the sustainability of an SME business. So what do I mean? If you have thought through your products, you've thought through the people that you're targeted at, and you think through that process up to the point of having different touch points with which you create awareness and advertise your brand, you're not shooting in the dark. So if you're going to have any initiative, you know who you're speaking with. If you're going to have any promotion, you know who to target your promotion with. And because you've done that consistently, remember I said branding takes consistency. It's not a one-off thing. So not what I do for 1 month and I stop and I say, well, I've done branding. It's consistent. So when you do that consistently over time, you begin to build loyalty with your customers and your consumers. And of course, with loyalty, it then means that your business sustainability is assured, because people will keep coming back and they will keep coming back because there's something that is seen in you that they don't see in other people. Okay,
so advise the viewers on how branding helps the growth, what they should do. Just talk to them.
So I think for an average
Yes,
SME
an SME.
business, my singular advice would be, branding is not a distraction. A lot of them say, oh, I don't have time for branding, I'll do that later. It's not a distraction. In fact, it's an integral part to the success of the business. So it's very important to start early as when you're thinking of starting the business or you're thinking of writing a business plan, you should then start thinking of how that business is going to undergo branding. It's very important. And even for a business that has started without having that understanding, it's never too late. You can actually start. And I always tell people, it doesn't necessarily have to involve money. And when it involves money, definitely to come to a point where it will involve money, you can do branding with the most minimal cost.
Of money.
You know, it's not for me. I don't believe in doing everything just for the sake of people knowing or hearing. You need to ensure that whatever you're doing speaks to something. And in that way, you're able to manage your costs. But you cannot totally run away from spending money, because that money is going to help in the business growth. So I would say branding is important. It's not something that should be overlooked. An understanding of it is important also, so that you're not just doing advertising and thinking you're doing branding.
Thank you very much, Ma.
Thank
If
you.
you're just joining us, we have been speaking with Bola Joko Ajayi, and she has been talking to us on branding, the key to SME growth and development. Please stay tuned as Business Matters continues.
Finally, is our business success tips.
Branding is important for SMEs that wish to become players outside their domicile. That wraps up this edition of Business Matters. Please do reach us on our various social media platforms. Till I come your way next time, I am Oro Akporono. Thanks for watching.